And we have had over many, many years a very, very close connection with the Clavigero, who is the gentleman that holds all the keys for the Vatican.
Today I spoke with Jan Arnold, the Vice President of Sales for Rocco Forte Hotels. The Rocco Forte family has been in the hospitality industry for 4 generations. And we talked about how Sir Rocco Forte's philosophy is deeply rooted in the company's DNA, their recent investment from PIF, and some once-in-a-lifetime experiences offered by their iconic hotels around the world, including one in Rome that literally unlocks the Vatican. Jan, thank you so much for joining me at Luxury Travel Innovators. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. It's fantastic to be here.
Great to see you here in California at Pendry, West Hollywood. It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a good place to be.
Absolutely. So tell us a little more about Rocco Forte Hotels.
Yeah. Well, look, we're a small hotel brand, 15 properties all in the center of Europe, all the way from the UK down to Italy. And I have to say, when I joined the group 5 years ago, it was interesting to see how well recognized and known the brand is, especially in the United States, for only having 15 hotels. So I sometimes think we really punch over our weight line here. And the hotels are, very, very unique in their way. It's really about the individuality of the hotels, the authenticity of the properties. And then in the end, the Forte family that is really, really behind that. And the nice thing is it's a family-owned brand. And so we're kind of owner and operator at the same time, which allows us a lot of flexibility when it comes to making decisions on our business, really moving our business forward, making changes. And, we're pretty quick to market, which is something that we really enjoy. Really on the top end of the market, 5-star deluxe. And all the hotels are really in fantastic locations, really where you want to be. And that's something that is very unique about our hotels. And that's really how we position them over the years in the marketplace. And that's really what has given us the edge in many of the properties that we're in.
Which was the first property?
So the first hotel we had was 28 years ago, the Balmoral up in Edinburgh. Sir Rocco bought that hotel at that time, and that's really where the brand started. And I don't think he really knew that he would be growing it to 15 or 20 hotels in the future. It's an iconic property. It's one of those old railway hotels. It sits on top of Waverley train station. Beautiful historic building. I think it's actually the most photographed building in Scotland,
really?
With a clock tower. And that really started us off. And from there we expanded into Italy and further into Europe. But it's a hotel that is still really at the center of what we're doing, and probably with the due receipt, probably our flagship property that we have out there.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What, as far as countries and visitation into Rocco Forte properties, do you see any substantial differences between the English properties or Scottish properties and Italian properties, et cetera? Or is it fairly similar?
It's a good question. The US market continues to really be our biggest driver, and that's really across our entire portfolio, because we happen to be in places where the Americans really like to travel to. We're in Edinburgh, we're in London, got a property in Brussels, Rome, De Rome up in Berlin. We are in Munich, and then 2 hotels in Rome, Florence. So it's really the places when Americans come over that they enjoy traveling to. But then obviously the domestic markets tend to be very important for our hotels as well. So it's really the US number 1, UK is number 2, and then the European countries, but also the Middle East really enjoys our properties. So it's, but it's relatively consistent across the portfolio.
Fantastic. You and I chatted a little about how when Sir Rocco Forte called you to consider joining the company, that it's really a true family-run operation. Tell us a little bit about that process. I think that was really fun for our listeners to hear.
It is, and this is one of the unique factors of our brand. It's a true family business. Sir Rocco, our chairman, founder, and CEO, he's very involved in the operations. Actually, I was joking with him today, and I said he's actually more our COO than our CEO because he's so involved in the operations. And then we have Olga Pelizzi, his sister, who does all the interior design of our properties, and then his 3 children, Charles, who's in charge of the development of all our properties, Lydia, who does all the food and beverage, the bars and the restaurants for the brand, and then we have Irene. Irene is the one child that pulled away a little bit from the business, set up her own skincare line, and she's now slowly returning into the business to take on all our spas. So it's a true family business, and after having worked with Four Seasons for 20 years, it was interesting to switch from a large corporation to a smaller family-run business. And it's fantastic to see how hands-on the family is. And as I mentioned to you, it has been a great learning curve. And I guess my hiring was one of those areas that I found hilarious. And it really showed me very quickly how this company functions. Because I was living in Dubai working for Four Seasons at that time. And I remember it was a Sunday and my phone rings and it's a UK mobile phone number that I didn't know. So I picked up the call and it was, hello, my name is Rocco Forte. Somebody gave me your CV. We need a new VP of sales. Are you interested to have a conversation with us? I was like, is somebody pulling my leg here? But the way the conversation went on, I realized actually it is Sir Rocco. And from here on, the conversations evolved. And a couple of months later, I decided to leave Four Seasons and join Rocco Forte Hotels. And as you do with these interviews, you speak to HR, you speak to other department heads and everything. And then the last interview, he said to me, I'd never hire anybody unless I've met them in person, especially not for an important position like this, VP of Sales, where you're part of the executive committee. Can you come to London? I was in New York, in Dubai at that time, but I hopped on a plane, flew over to London, and he invited me on a Sunday to lunch to his estate, which is just outside of London. And I thought it was a proper business lunch or business interview. It was Sunday. I arrived to his estate. He was there in his polo shirt and jeans, and very casual conversation. It turned out he had invited the managing director and his wife. His own wife was there as well. His sister, Olga, was there, a friend of the family. And we were sitting around this big wooden table that some of you might know from our advertisements, whatever. It's in the garden, a big, beautiful wooden table. And we're having the longest lunch ever. We were sitting there and we're chatting, drinking wine, having champagne for hours. And there was no conversation about business. It was just about everything but business. And then about an hour before I had to leave, Karim, the managing director, said, look, Rocco, I think we should sit down somewhere and have a bit of a business chat here. By then, we all had a couple of glasses of champagne and wine. But we went into his office and, had a short conversation, half an hour. And he said, look, we really like you. Do you want to start working for us? And that was it. And, it was not a business interview. It was really about getting to know me and really making sure that I fit into the company. And that's how Sir Rocco and the family run the business. It's about finding the right people that have this emotional intelligence, that they feel fit into the company, because that really what makes us different to many of the other hotel groups out there.
Yeah, and also I would assume being an owner-operator of the hotel, that kind of carries through, right? That you are all sort of rowing in the same direction, so to speak, right?
Absolutely. And so I joined Rocco Forte Hotels in November of 2019. And we all know what happened 3 months later. COVID hit us, right?
Yeah.
The wheels came off and kind of our industry collapsed. And it was certainly a very scary and frightening period. I had just joined this company and, I had no idea how they would react to a major crisis like this. And I was sitting by the phone waiting for him to ring me and say, hey, look, last one in, first one out, nice meeting you, that's it. But that didn't happen. And he barely made any redundancies during this period. He said, look, I want to hold on to my teams because I know those are the people that eventually will help us to get back on our feet. He said, the pandemic will be over at some point. Nobody knew when, but it will be over. And we got to make sure we have the right people on board. So the way he saw this company through COVID was unbelievable and really helped me to fully understand the DNA of this company and how important the team is to running that business. And he actually went to the banks and took a huge loan on that was really just there to pay salaries. Yeah. And, doing something like this was quite remarkable. And it really helped me within a very short period of time to understand the true DNA of Rocco Forte Hotels. And it was a scary period, but also a great learning period, I have to say.
Yeah, people first, family, really run the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it is a true family business. And that's where you really recognize that and where you understood that it's family first, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, still completely run by the Rocco Forte family, but you brought an investment from PIF relatively recently. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So PIF joined the business in December of 23. Until then, Sir Rocco was or is the majority stakeholder or shareholder of the company. He also has a couple of family members that are invested in the business. And at that point, We also had an Italian bank in the business. So there was an opportunity. The bank, wanted to kind of depart from the business. And also there was an opportunity. Sir Rocco has 5 sisters. So Olga is the only one that is really involved in the business. The other 4 sisters were only shareholders in Rocco Forte Hotels, but they had nothing to do with the business. And it was an opportunity to kind of buy the sisters and the bank out of the business. And that's kind of what PIF did when they came on board. They had a lot of conversations with the executive leadership team, with Sir Rocco, with Karim, to really determine that, our philosophy and the way we operate, fits into their Vision 2030 in terms of diversifying the business for Saudi Arabia and really investing into the tourism sector. So they felt that Rocco Forte Hotels is a company that they want to work with. And they bought a significant share. They're now sitting on the board of Rocco Forte Hotels. But they're really in the background. So they really let us get on with our business. So they're really, I think, the dream business partner that you want to have. They gave you the money. They allowed us to infuse more money into the business. And especially after COVID, it really gave us an opportunity to look at our product, to renovate, to really inject some more money into the business, but also to kind of continue growing our portfolio. So they're a fantastic business partner, and they really trust us. They let us go on with our business, with the operations of the business, and we're very pleased to have them on board.
It's fantastic. That leads me to future openings in pipeline. With that investment, I'm sure comes great opportunity, and just kind of curious what you can tell our listeners about what's in the pipeline, what's exciting.
Yeah, I mean it's a very exciting period for us at the moment, and as you said, with PIF coming on board, more capital came into the company that really allowed us to look after the existing properties and make sure that they're really continue to be the best also in terms of product in the destinations they operate in, but also look outside and see, where do we want to grow the brand more. And as I said earlier, Charles, Sir Rocco's son, is the one that drives the development side of our business. So it's his role to make sure that we grow our portfolio, that we find new destinations. And he's doing an outstanding job. He really sourced some fantastic opportunities for us. So the next very exciting one for us is going to be in Milano on the 6th of November. We're going to open or reopen the Carlton Hotel. It used to be a Baglioni. We've taken it over and completely renovated it, really gutted it from the inside and rebuilt that property. So 6th of November, this is going to come online. It will complement the Rocco Forte House, which is 11 fully serviced apartments that we have in the city, and the Carlton on Via del Senato, Via della Spiga, right in the heart of the fashion district, will help us, to really position ourselves in the key cities of Italy. We have a project confirmed just now in Noto. Noto is the Baroque capital of Sicily. Yeah. It's a museum that was curated by a Frenchman who really poured a lot of time, effort, and money into that museum. And he was ready to sell, so we kind of took that one over, and we're turning it into a 30-room property. So that's going to come online late 26, early 27, and it will kind of allow us to hopefully soon close the circuit of Sicily with Palermo, with Verdura, and then we're going to have Noto. I think the only one that is missing is potentially going to be Taormina, so watch that space. Okay. Naples is another one that, and when we talk especially to our US advisor communities, they're particularly excited about Naples because everybody has to transition through Naples on their way to the Amalfi Coast of Capri. But it's really a lack of proper hotels in that city. So with us opening there in 27, it will really allow, especially the travelers that go to Capri, to have a 2-3 night stopover, really take in the best of Naples and then travel on to some of those beautiful destinations. And then, we're also looking at places outside of Italy. So, Paris is another one that we've been looking at for quite a while. Madrid, Portugal in general, Greece. So there's a lot of places that we're researching and where Charles in particular is very active on. And also with our new investor, with PIF, there's certainly some projects in conversations at the moment as it relates to Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. The Red Sea coast of Saudi Arabia is absolutely stunning. I think it really rivals the Seychelles and the Maldives. So I think in the next couple of years, we'll definitely see a Rocco Forte hotel in that part of Saudi Arabia as well. And then last but not least, the US. Obviously, with a large percentage of the business from the US coming to Rocco Forte hotels, it would be a logical step to have a hotel in the United States as well. It's easier said than done, but we have now somebody based in the United States as well to help us with the development side. So if I had to be a betting man, I would say in the next 5 to 8 years, we'll probably have a property in North America as well.
Great. You think East or West Coast?
Well, I think logically it would probably make more sense to start on the East Coast.
Right.
It's a little bit, our head office is based in London. We're a British hotel group. I think it would make more sense to start on the East Coast, but then certainly, where we are right now, Los Angeles is a fantastic destination. We'd love to have something out here. So I think start on the East Coast, and then venture into, more the western parts of the United States.
Great. You think anything on the ski side in Europe or anywhere else?
It is something that we have been looking at multiple times, especially on the Italian side of the Alps and the Dolomites. I think that would make a lot of sense. There's quite a few family businesses that are now being turned over, where the next generation really don't want to run these properties anymore, and we're looking at quite a few of them. The challenge always is they're very small in many cases.
Yeah.
And you got to really find a property that has certain economies of scales.
Totally.
But with our seasonal properties, for example, Verdura, it would make a lot of sense if we close Verdura for 3 months in the winter time. Then we can shift some of the staff into the Alps. So yes, it is something that we're looking at, but no specific projects that we can talk about. The other destination that we're going to open a second property is going to be in Puglia. So we have the Massaria Torre Maizza, which is a wonderful, wonderful property. We're adding another 11 rooms to that one. But there's an opportunity to take on, or there was an opportunity to take on another Massaria not far from there, and that's going to happening in the next 2 years. So we're expanding our footprint in that part of the world.
And for those listeners, especially here in the U.S., that aren't super familiar with Puglia, can you tell us just a little bit more about that region? I mean, it's so, I know it's like unspoiled and authentic and extraordinary, especially on the food and olive oil and things like that. I'm curious to hear your take on it.
You used exactly the right words. I think it's one of those parts of the United States that, although it has become much more popular over the last couple of years, but is still very much undiscovered, and it's still very wild, very rural in its approach. And, these Massarias that I talked about, they're actually fortified farms. So, the medieval ages, these were farmhouses, and there were, a lot of gangs and robbers, roaming around. So they put these walls around these farmhouses to kind of protect themselves. And there's quite a few of them around, and, they lend themselves to be absolutely beautiful hotels that are really iconic to the destination. And it's a fantastic experience. You're there, beautiful coastline, wonderful waters, and you smell all the fruit and the vegetables that are grown there. It's a wonderful part of Italy. I mean, I have to say, I'm always amazed about Italy. You go to northern Italy, and it has a very Central European flair, and then you go down to the south, and it's a different world. I mean, it's a very unique place, and Puglia is certainly one of the most undiscovered places, I think, still in Italy.
And especially with your growth in Sicily, it's another, and now growth in Puglia as well. That's a perfect circuit for a guest to visit as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of guests that kind of do, or take a journey of Italy, through the eyes of Rocco Forte. You start in Rome, maybe you go to Florence, and then you head down, to the island of Sicily with Palermo, with the Villa Egea in Verdura. So it is something that, with our brand now, I think we're the largest luxury hotel brand in Italy. And it really gives, especially the US travelers, but travelers from all around the world, the opportunity to experience that beautiful part of the world, all with Rocco Forte.
Yeah. Well, and it's perfect tee up for me, because that allows guests to use the multi-property itinerary booking engine that we provide for you guys. The ability for me to just sit down with my wife, discover our trip, and book a tour of Italy all in one transaction, or through the Rocco Forte Nights side of things, the same, right? The advisor can go in, be able to use the multi-property booking tool, and be able to book an itinerary for the guest very easily and seamlessly.
Yeah, so absolutely. And it's this innovation that is so important to us, to really make sure that we tie things together, that commercially we have the right offerings, but also for the guest, with a one-stop shop, to really put something together that makes sense to them, because nothing is more annoying than if you have to book it through 3, 4, 5 steps. And I mean, you and your teams have been outstanding in helping us on that journey.
Oh, thanks so much. From an innovation perspective, what outside of booking and whatnot, either operationally or from the marketing perspective, what are you guys exploring at Rocco Forte?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and innovation, I guess, is something that everybody talks about. It's an important aspect of our business, because I think sometimes the hospitality business is kind of stuck in the medieval ages in some areas. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to innovate and drive things forward. When we look at innovation, what is really, really important to us is really two factors. Either what impact does it have on the guest? We don't want to innovate just for the sake of innovating.
Yeah.
It's really about with the experience, the service experience of the guest in mind, and really making sure that we think things through from the viewpoint of a guest and really make things more wholesome from that perspective. So, for example, when we look at suites, how can we really elevate our suite product? How can we better tell our stories? And what innovation is needed in that particular space? And then the other aspect is commercially. Does it make sense to innovate? And if you innovate, what commercial benefits could that bring? And we just talked about the singular journey through our properties, but also really understanding better who our guests are, like a single customer view, really making sure that we have all the information on the guest and that we really know that when Adam stays with us at Brown's and then he goes to the De Russie and then he goes to Torremaizza, that we have the right information on Adam, on his family, and that we really serve him and his family in the right way and, to his expectation, the family's expectations. So I think this is really where we need to plug innovation in to make sure that the experience that our guests have in our properties is, as good as it can be.
Yeah. Are you guys looking at anything with AI at all? Like, I can't get through an interview anymore without mentioning it. So I have to say anything with AI.
Look, I think AI is such a fascinating topic. And as you said, I think it's on everybody's mind now, but it has been around for quite a long time, right? I mean, for example, we use ideas for our revenue management. I mean, that's a perfect example of how AI has been used for many, many years, and we continue using that. So, we certainly look with our technological teams, how can we bring AI more into, our reservation process, really making sure that we have the right products, the right suggestions, but also the right information for our guests. So it is something that we're certainly exploring. But again, we always want to start with a guest in mind, and then we ask ourselves, how can technology help us to improve that guest experience? And, if AI is going to be one of those tools in the future, then absolutely, we'll always look at it.
Totally. That sort of helps me get into something that I hear quite a bit on the podcast, which is about experiential travel and once-in-a-lifetime experiences. I've had a lot of conversations with other hotel groups and partners, as well as on the advisor side with Internova and the team there, and understanding and talking about that experiential travel seems to be what everybody is looking for in this year and beyond. Have you been seeing similar, and what are some of the unique Rocco Forte experiences that you're introducing?
It's a really good question. I think experiences, it's, as you said, it's one of those words that everybody always talks about, and I think it's probably also overused in many areas, and because everything these days is about experiences. But it certainly has a really important point, because it's about the experience that you have in the properties that ends up being memorable, and it's sometimes the small things that make the difference. It's really, what are we doing from a culinary perspective? What are we doing from a spa perspective? And these are two areas that we're incredibly strong in. We have Fulvio Perangelini, who is a master chef out of Italy, who oversees all our food and beverage. And it's really about bringing him more into the business and really giving people access to what he brings to the table. And it could be a small experience, but it is something that makes a difference. Irene Forte on the spa side, again, the experience that we can build around this one, more into the health rejuvenation. That's something that is very, very important these days, and lots of our guests are asking for that. So we have all of these tools in-house, and it's really building the right experiences around that one. But then also, when we look a little bit larger, what are some of the stories that we can tell these days? I mean, right now, Rome is kind of the center of the world, as it has been for so many years, with the passing of the Pope and the conclave that is going to start soon. And we have had, over many, many years, a very, very close connection with the Clavigero, who is the gentleman that holds all the keys for the Vatican. And you can't believe it, but he walks around in the evening and he really locks the Vatican, the Vatican Museum, he locks the Sistine Chapel. And then in the morning at 5 o'clock, he does the same tour again, and he unlocks, he has this massive bunch of keys, thousands of them. And our guests have the opportunity to go with him in the morning. So we can hook them up with this gentleman. And you imagine, you could be the first one in the morning to walk into the Sistine Chapel.
Oh my goodness.
No crowds in there. And these are experiences that our guests absolutely love. I mean, it wouldn't happen right now with the conclave, starting soon. But it is an experience that is absolutely unique, that can certainly be provided. And this is something that our hotels have curated because we're so close to the destination. We want to be really authentic to the destination. So knowing those people in the city that can make this happen is very important to us. The other experience that we put together with a UK tour operator, and it goes a little bit back to slow travel, which is obviously the trend that I know all of your podcast guests have been talking about. How can we slow things down a little bit? And we created this tour where you start on a train at the Balmoral and you go down to London, to Brown's Hotel, you cross over to the Amigo, all of it on a train in Brussels. You go to Berlin, you go to Munich, you cross the Alps, you go to Florence, Rome, and then you head over to Sicily, Palermo, and then you end up in Verdura. And it's a journey completely by train.
Wow.
And it's a fantastic way to really take it all in, really slow down, see the best of the countryside. And it's an experience that, again, has, especially been picked up by media and press a lot. But we have had quite a few guests that really said, look, this is fantastic. That's like a 2-3 week journey, the best of Rocco Forte, the best of Europe by train. And it's things like this, where we really try to be creative and come up with suggestions that our guests would really appreciate, and not really creating experience for the sake of creating experience, but inspiring people in terms of what can be done in the destinations that we're in.
That's amazing. Yeah, that sounds fabulous. Some of those experiences that you talked about sound truly once in a lifetime. I mean, that's what guests are looking for. That's authentic, real experiences.
It really is. And again, you always need somebody that can kind of unlock these experiences for you, right? You go to a destination and you read up on it and you think what you want to do. But if you have somebody that takes you by the hand, like say our concierge team, and says, look, how about this? How about that? What do you like? What do your kids like? And really comes up with some of those ideas that really speak to you and your family. That's where we try to make the difference.
That's great. Well, and others that help with that are phenomenal travel advisors. And obviously on Luxury Travel Innovators, we have a very large travel advisory community that listens to us and follows us. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about Rocco Forte Nights and the program and what you guys do for the advisor community.
Look, I mean, the advisors are really what helped us to be where we are today. I mean, the advisor community, we as a company owe a lot to the advisor community out there. Sir Rocco himself feels really, really closely connected, and he always says he really loves that community. And he always jokes, he said, some of you actually know our hotels better than we do because you book them so often, and you ask all these really detailed questions, and all the things that you really need to know to make sure that the guest is really looked after. So the advisor community in the United States, but also in the rest of the world, is something that is very close to our heart. And, other hotel brands are sometimes moving away. They're going more into the B2C area, but really the B2B focus with the advisor community is incredibly important to us. And that's really where we put a lot of focus on. We constantly try to innovate, in that field, in areas around how can we improve our commission payments. We're working on a project with Sion at the moment to see how we can streamline commission payment processes, because we know how important it is to the advisor community, especially the independent contractors. So we really want to make sure that we're good business partners there. So hopefully we have some positive news in that field, very, very soon. But then also advisor tracking, production, that the advisors are bringing to our properties, and you and your teams have been incredibly helpful in that field. But it is something to really understand what we can do to align ourselves better and more with the advisors. And the Rocco Forte Nights program is really our own proprietary preferred partner program. And, it's a small community that we have here, but it's really the ones that have over the years been driving our business, and, will continue driving our business in the future. And being close to that community in particular is very important to our business, to our leadership, to Sir Rocco, and something that will, always continue that way.
So you mentioned earlier, of course, that a lot of your business comes from the United States, and there's been a little bit of recent sort of uncertainty around the economy here in the States. And I'm curious, have you seen any shifts in behavior to your properties this summer and beyond?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And as you said, a large percentage of our business originates from the United States. So if we have a problem in the United States, we'll have a problem in our companies. So being very much aware of that and being at the front foot of that is something that we really look at very closely. I have to say our pace from the United States seems to be a little bit slower than what we have seen in the previous years. And we've talked to a lot of advisors these days. And there's kind of three answers that we're getting quite a lot. The first one is, well, look, if you deal with really ultra high net worth individuals, They don't care. They will continue traveling, and nothing's going to change in that field. The other answer is that in some areas, people are holding back and making decisions. They still want to travel, and they will travel, but they maybe haven't booked their summer travel yet, and they want to wait a little bit longer. Not quite sure what they're waiting for, but it seems there's a feeling that in a couple of weeks or months, there's probably a little bit more certainty about what's going to happen over the summer months. So I think the pace overall, not only on our side, but also with a lot of the advisors and the larger companies that we're talking out there, is something that is slower than probably what happened in the last couple of years. And then the third comment that we're getting once in a while is that it seems some of the travelers, the end users that actually go on these trips to Europe, there's a little bit of a fear, I would say, that maybe they might be singled out for being Americans, and fingers might be pointed at them and saying, look, what's going on in your country, and they feel that there might be an element of hostility. And I have to say, I don't think, wherever you go in Europe, it doesn't matter if you go to Portugal, if you go to Germany, if you go to Italy. I don't think any of that will happen. I think people really have a very clear understanding of, what is the political side, the economical side that is going on at the moment. But then also, American travelers, they're so important to all of our business in Europe, to the tourism industry in general. And I think, really nobody should be afraid that there's anything like this happening in Europe. And, we certainly would be very excited to have as many American guests, in our properties. But these are some of the things that we're talking about at the moment. And, where there's a degree of uncertainty or question marks, how the rest of the year is going to shape up.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, Jan, thank you so much for your time. I so greatly appreciate it. I always finish each episode with 3 rapid fire questions. So this is the most exciting part of the podcast. So the first one is, what personal travel are you most excited about next?
Yeah, it's a good one. So our summer holiday is always kind of the key trip for us in the year. And there's kind of 2 elements to that trip. So this year we're going to go for a week to our resort in Verdura. When you work for Rocco Forte Hotels, you have a certain number of, or you have the opportunity to book yourself on a team rate, and that depends how busy a hotel is going to be if we avail these team rates. But we're hoping to go for a week to Verdura, and that's going to be fantastic. I have 2 children; they absolutely love that resort. The resort is massive; it's larger than the country of Monaco. Wow. So it's a huge resort. You have paddle, you have tennis, you have football, you have pickleball, which apparently a lot of the American customers are very excited about. You have golf, and really it's a sanctuary. And we have this wonderful new villa product there with 20 private villas that are probably some of the finest private villas in the Mediterranean. So I'm hoping that, we wiggle ourselves into one of those villas, with a private pool, and, you have a real choice. You can have full access to the resort and use all of the facilities there, but you can also just stay in your villa, swim in the pool, and, leave a day, just with a family, which is outstanding. So that's going to be the lazy part of the holiday. And then we return to Germany, and then we're going to go to Canada. My wife is from Vancouver. So we're heading over to Vancouver for 2 weeks. And that's a fantastic trip because I love Canada. I love the outdoors. So there's a lot in terms of hiking, swimming in the ocean, all the great experiences you can do out there. And the other thing that I really like about these trips is the time difference. It's 9 hours. When I wake up in the morning, all my emails are in. And although I'm on holiday, you always look through the emails and, just deal with the key things. And then for the rest of the day, no emails come in. And it's a true holiday because you're so detached from, the nucleus of our business in London and in Europe. So that's something that I'm very excited about. Yeah,
that's great. Plus, Vancouver in the summer is beautiful.
It's funny. I only know Vancouver as a hot and sunny city because we're always there in July and August. To me, it's like the Caribbean. Whilst in reality, it's quite a rainy place. But January,
don't let it fool you. It rains.
Exactly. No, so it's fantastic.
All right. So the podcast is all about innovation and moving forward. But what I like to do here is I like to step back for a moment and think about the past. What do you miss about the glamour or glamorous days of travel? I told some people it's the stamped lion ashtrays at the Ritz-Carlton. It's about the glamorous days of air travel, or when things just moved more slowly. What would be your sort of flashback that you miss from the past?
I think I'm pretty boring here because I know, so many of your previous guests have talked about it. And I think it was with Chris from Montage, he talked about it. But I think the whole element of slow travel, is something that I really miss. And when I said earlier, going to Vancouver in the summer, where it's almost a little bit like a technological detox, because there's no emails coming in during the day, and it allows me to really unwind and relax for a couple of days. And that's something that I sometimes miss. I think we're in such a fast-paced environment, and we bring it upon ourselves, right? With our iPads and with our iPhones, we constantly keep looking at it. But this is something that, I really miss, the days of taking it easy. And nowadays you have Wi-Fi everywhere. You're always, reachable.
Totally.
And, that's something that I kind of miss a little bit, the ability to completely switch off.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, it's funny too, because while the world has become more connected, right? Everything's become closer, right? You can go anywhere quickly and easily, and you're connected globally at every scale. But then at the end of the day, you then also are you're always connected, and so you miss some of those. You have young children as well, right? It's like you miss that time to just disconnect and be one-on-one with your loved ones and everything. So I totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see how we make that happen.
Let's see how we do it. I know. And then last, right? We're an innovative show. We're an innovative organization. What innovation in travel doesn't exist today that you think is missing? And it doesn't have to be technology. It could just be operationally. It could be experience-wise. But what's missing? What's your idea for the next entrepreneur to pick up?
I know. Look, I've been thinking about this a lot, because there's one thing that I really miss and that I hate, and that's my biggest pet peeve. And that's when you go to a hotel and you use the luggage racks, and they're always too small for your suitcase. Right? They're like, I travel a lot, and sometimes I'm on the road for 2 weeks or for 3 weeks. I have these massive suitcases. And then you go to a hotel and they give these teeny tiny luggage racks, and it doesn't work. And then the luggage falls down, you got to put it on the floor, you got to put it on the couch, and it looks terrible. I don't understand why hotel companies, and I know I work for one, why they don't have proper luggage racks where you can get a big suitcase on. And I was in Paris a couple of weeks ago, and I had a meeting with the CEO of Remova. And I said, look, there's one thing that I want to tell you, and I don't really even want commission on it in the future, but build a proper luggage rack that you can get your big suitcases on. If that problem was fixed, and maybe there's somebody here, in the audience that is listening to us that is going to invent that, I mean, go for it. I think that is one of the things that is missing, and I don't know why we're not getting it right.
And have Remova sponsor it, and have it be present in all the best hotels in the world.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah, maybe I get 10% commission on it. But anyhow,
we heard it here. It's on record.
It's on record. Yeah. But it is something that really bugs me, and it is the same story wherever you're going.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Jan. If I don't see you this summer in Europe, I'll see you at Virtuoso Travel Week in August, and I look forward to it.
Perfect. Me too. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All
right. Thanks for watching this episode of Luxury Travel Innovators. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. See you next time.